You work for me now, the desert Apache queen told the cowboy. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting an orange glow across the vast, barren landscape of the desert. The wind howled like a wild beast, sending dust spiraling into the air. In the midst of this desolation, a lone cowboy rode across the barren wasteland on his trusty horse. His name was Cole Winters, a man hardened by years of solitude, a man who found comfort in the vast emptiness of the desert. He was a man used to the quiet, to the sound of his boots crunching against the dry earth, and to the scorching heat of the sun. But today, something was different. The wind had changed, and the air felt charged with an energy he couldn't explain. As he rode along the dusty trail, his thoughts wandered to the rumors he'd heard in the nearby town of Redstone. The townsfolk spoke of a woman so powerful that even the toughest men dared not cross her. They called her the Desert Apache Queen. She ruled these lands with an iron fist, commanding respect from all who crossed her path. Some said she was a mythical figure, a ghost who moved like a shadow across the desert. Others claimed she was a fierce warrior, unmatched in battle. Cole didn't know what to believe, but the tales had intrigued him. As he approached the edge of the desert, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the land. His horse slowed to a walk, sensing the change in the air. Cole squinted into the distance, where a figure stood alone on the horizon. She was tall and strong, her silhouette outlined against the setting sun. She wore a headdress made of feathers, and her eyes seemed to pierce through the fading light. It was her, the Desert Apache Queen. She was real. Cole's heart skipped a beat as he drew closer. He could feel the weight of her gaze, even from this distance. The woman stood still, waiting for him, as if she had known he would come. As he approached, he felt the tension rise in the air. He had heard the stories, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The queen was even more imposing than he had imagined. Her presence radiated power, and every step she took seemed to shake the very ground beneath him. When they were close enough, she spoke, her voice low but filled with authority. "You work for me now," she said, her words hanging in the air like a challenge. Cole's eyes widened, and he felt a mix of surprise and disbelief. He had come to the desert searching for something, perhaps answers, perhaps adventure, but he never imagined it would lead him to this woman, this force of nature. "I work for you?" Cole asked, his voice barely a whisper. The queen nodded, a slight smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, you will serve me, and in return, you will find what you seek. But remember, there is no turning back." The words echoed in his mind, and for a moment, Cole felt a sense of foreboding. He had never been a man to follow orders, but something about this woman, about her presence, made him question everything he thought he knew. As he stood there, facing the Desert Apache Queen, he realized that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. He had entered her world now, and there would be no way out except on her terms. Cole stood frozen, his mind racing as the Desert Apache Queen's words echoed in his ears. "You work for me now." The weight of her command pressed down on him, but there was something in her eyes, something that spoke of a deeper understanding, something that made him feel like he had no choice but to follow. It was not fear that gripped him, but an odd mixture of curiosity and a sense of fate that he could not explain. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice steady, though inside, his heart was pounding. The queen regarded him silently for a moment, her gaze never leaving his. Then, with a slight nod, she turned and began to walk away, motioning for him to follow. As they walked through the desert, the evening sun, casting long shadows over the sand, Cole couldn't help but wonder what had led him to this moment. He had always been a man of action, a cowboy used to living alone, working the land, and avoiding unnecessary entanglements. But now, he found himself following this woman, this Apache queen, into the unknown. "You have skills," she said, breaking the silence as they walked. "But you need to learn the ways of the desert, the ways of my people. I need someone who can be trusted, someone who can adapt." Cole's curiosity deepened. He had spent years working in the harsh desert, but he knew nothing about the ways of the Apache. He had heard stories, of course, stories of fierce warriors, of mysterious rituals, of lives lived in harmony with the land. But this was different. This was real. "What exactly do you need me for?" he asked, his voice filled with both doubt and anticipation. The queen stopped walking and turned to face him, her eyes hard and unwavering. "I need you to help protect my people," she said. "There are enemies, men who seek to take what is ours. They do not respect the land, they do not understand it. They are coming, and we must be ready." Cole nodded slowly, taking in her words. He had seen his fair share of violence, his fair share of men who were willing to do whatever it took to take what they wanted. But this was different. This was a fight for survival, for honor, for something much bigger than just land or cattle. It was a fight for a way of life. "I understand," he said, his voice steady now. "But how can I help? I'm just one man." The queen's lips curled into a small smile. "You are more than just one man, Cole Winters. You are someone who understands strength, who understands what it means to survive. You will learn from us, and in return, you will help us fight back." She turned and began to walk again, and Cole followed, a sense of purpose settling in his chest. As the sun sank lower in the sky, the desert around them seemed to come alive with a quiet energy, a pulse that Cole had never felt before. He could hear the wind whispering through the rocks, the distant sound of hooves beating against the earth. It was as if the land itself was speaking to him, welcoming him into something much larger than himself. As they approached a small camp, Cole could see the Apache warriors gathered around a fire, their faces painted with intricate designs, their eyes burning with the same fierce determination that he had seen in the queen's gaze. This was their world, their way of life, and now it was his too. "This is where you will learn," the queen said as they reached the camp. She stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. "You will train with my warriors, learn their ways, and prepare for the battle ahead. It will not be easy, but if you are to help us, you must become one of us." Cole felt a surge of determination rise within him. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this was different. This was a fight that was worth more than any cattle ranch or gold mine. This was a fight for the future, for a people who had lived for centuries in the desert. "I will do whatever it takes," he said, his voice unwavering. The queen nodded, her gaze softening slightly. "Then welcome to the desert, Cole Winters. Your journey begins now." Cole stood at the edge of the camp, his eyes taking in the scene before him. The Apache warriors, who had once seemed like mere shadows to him, were now real, their presence undeniable. The fire crackled in the center of the camp, casting flickering shadows on their faces as they moved with a purpose. He could feel the heat of the flames against his skin, the smell of wood smoke in the air, mixing with the dry scent of the desert. His heart was pounding, his body tense with anticipation. This was the moment he had been preparing for. The desert Apache queen had given him a task, one that would test everything he had ever known about strength, loyalty, and survival. He had come to the desert searching for something deeper than gold or land. And now, in the presence of these warriors, he realized that the real battle was not just for land, but for honor, respect, and survival in a world that was constantly shifting. As he stepped closer to the fire, the warriors paused in their training, their eyes locking onto him. Their faces were stoic, their expressions unreadable. But there was a glint in their eyes, a challenge. They were testing him, just as the queen had promised. One of the warriors, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. His presence was imposing, and Cole could feel the weight of his gaze as he sized him up. "You are the outsider," the warrior said, his voice rough, yet filled with authority. "But you will learn our ways. You will learn what it means to fight for something greater than yourself." Cole nodded, his throat tight. "I understand," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in his chest. The warrior did not smile, but his eyes softened just slightly, as if he saw something in Cole that others had not. "Then follow me," the warrior said, motioning for Cole to follow him into the heart of the camp. The queen was waiting there, standing tall and unwavering, her gaze fixed on him as he approached. Her presence was commanding, and Cole could feel the air around her shimmer with power. "You will learn from him," she said, her voice calm but filled with an underlying strength. He will teach you the ways of the desert, of my people. If you are to help us, you must first learn to survive like us." The warrior, whose name was Takakota, began Cole's training the very next morning. It was grueling, physical, and relentless. Every day, Cole was pushed to his limits. They ran across the harsh desert terrain, practiced with weapons, learned to track in the sand, and survive with only the barest of essentials. The sun beat down on them relentlessly, the heat rising in waves from the earth, but Takakota showed no mercy. "This is the desert's way," he would say, his voice like gravel. "The desert does not care for weakness. It takes what it needs and leaves nothing behind." Cole found himself struggling at first. His muscles ached, his body was exhausted, and there were moments when he questioned whether he could continue. But something inside him stirred, a feeling he had not known before. This was not just about survival. It was about honor, about proving himself worthy of the trust the desert Apache queen had placed in him. Slowly, over the course of weeks, Cole began to change. His endurance improved, his skills sharpened, and he started to see the world through different eyes. The desert, once a harsh and unforgiving place, began to reveal its secrets to him. He learned to read the land, to understand its rhythms, and to respect its power. But more than that, he began to understand the Apache way of life, its connection to the earth, to the people, and to the spirits that guided them. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Cole found himself growing closer to the people around him. The warriors, who had once seen him as an outsider, now treated him as one of their own. They respected his determination, his strength, and his willingness to learn. And the queen, who had once commanded his service, now saw him as more than just a tool. She saw him as a brother in arms, someone who had earned the right to fight for their cause. One evening, as they sat around the fire, the queen turned to Cole, her expression unreadable. "You have learned much," she said, her voice soft but filled with an authority that left no room for doubt. "You are ready." Cole met her gaze, his heart racing. "Ready for what?" he asked, the question hanging in the air between them. The queen smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "Ready to fight. The enemy is coming, Cole Winters. And when they arrive, we will stand together. You are no longer just a cowboy. You are one of us now. A warrior." Cole stood in the heart of the Apache camp, his eyes scanning the horizon as the desert Apache queen's words echoed in his mind. He was no longer the cowboy who had wandered into the desert looking for a place to call his own. He had become something more, a warrior bound by honor, loyalty, and an unspoken understanding of the desert's unforgiving nature. But the real test was yet to come. The queen had spoken of an enemy, a force that threatened their way of life, and now, Cole was part of the team that would defend it. As night fell over the camp, the crackling of the fire and the rhythmic beat of the warriors' drums filled the air. The tension was palpable. The warriors had gathered around, and Cole stood among them, his eyes fixed on the queen. She stood tall and composed, her presence commanding respect, and her eyes surveyed the men and women around her with an intensity that could cut through stone. "Tomorrow, we ride," she said, her voice steady but filled with a quiet strength. "The enemy will come at dawn. We will meet them in the desert, where they think they have the advantage. But the desert belongs to us, and we will remind them of that." The warriors nodded in unison, a silent show of respect. Cole felt his heart begin to race. He had been training for months, learning their ways, becoming one with the desert. But this would be his first real battle. He had heard the stories of the Apache's fierce resistance, their ability to outwit and outlast their enemies. But now it was his turn to prove himself. As the queen turned to him, her eyes softened for the first time in what seemed like forever. "You have come a long way, Cole Winters," she said, her voice low and almost intimate. "Tomorrow, you will ride with us. You will fight for us and for yourself." Cole nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle on his chest like a stone. He had come to the desert looking for something he hadn't quite understood. But now, in this moment, he realized what it was. He had found a place to belong. As the warriors prepared for the battle ahead, Cole sat alone by the fire, his thoughts swirling. He had never been a man of violence, never one to seek conflict. But this was different. The Apache people weren't fighting for land or wealth. They were fighting for survival, for their very way of life. and Cole was going to fight alongside them. The night seemed to stretch on forever as Cole stared into the flames, the heat from the fire warming his face. In the distance, he could hear the howls of coyotes, the eerie calls that seemed to echo across the desert. He knew that in the morning, the enemy would come, and there would be no turning back. The Queen's words echoed in his mind once more. The desert belongs to us. It was a reminder that this land, this harsh, unforgiving desert, was not just a place, it was a part of them. And now, it was a part of him too. As dawn broke, casting its golden light over the desert, the warriors mounted their horses, ready for what was to come. Cole felt the stirrings of fear in his chest, but he pushed it down. This was the moment he had trained for. He rode alongside the Queen, his heart beating in time with the rhythm of the horse's hooves. The wind whipped through his hair, and the dry desert air burned in his lungs, but he didn't care. He was ready. The enemy was coming. And together, they would face it head-on. The battle was not just about defeating an enemy. It was about defending everything they stood for, about protecting the desert, the land, the people, and the future. As they rode into the heart of the desert, Cole couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This land, so vast and unforgiving, had shaped these people, had made them stronger, more resilient. And now, it was his turn to defend it. He glanced over at the Queen, whose expression was unreadable, but her eyes were filled with something deeper. Determination, strength, and a fierce love for her people and her land. Cole knew that no matter what happened, he would fight by her side, with every ounce of strength he had. The time for hesitation was over. The desert was their battlefield, and they would not back down. Cole could feel the tension rising in the air as the desert sun climbed higher, casting its harsh, unrelenting light over the battlefield. His heart was racing, and the adrenaline surged through his veins. The enemy was near. He could sense it in the stillness that enveloped the desert. The wind had died down, leaving behind an eerie silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of horses' hooves and the rhythmic sound of warriors preparing for battle. He was ready, but the weight of the moment still pressed heavily on his chest. He had trained for months under the watchful eye of the Queen and her warriors, learning their ways, adapting to their customs. Yet, no amount of training could prepare him for the reality of what was about to happen. The Queen, as ever, stood tall and composed, her presence commanding the respect of every warrior around her. Her eyes were focused, scanning the horizon, but Cole noticed a faint flicker of something deeper in her gaze, a flicker of uncertainty. It was a look he had never seen before, a crack in the armor of the woman who had led them all so bravely. He could only imagine the weight of the responsibility she carried on her shoulders. As the Queen rode ahead, Cole followed, his senses heightened as they neared the location where the battle would take place. The warriors around him rode in tight formation, their eyes sharp, their movements synchronized. Every warrior was prepared, ready to protect their land, their people, and the Queen who led them. Cole could feel the heat of the desert pressing in, but it was nothing compared to the weight of the moment. His hand gripped the reins tightly, his knuckles white from the pressure. As they approached a rocky outcrop, the enemy appeared, a group of riders coming over the rise, their figures outlined against the bright sky. Cole's breath caught in his chest as he saw them. Men from the other side, their eyes full of contempt and greed. They were here to take what they believed was rightfully theirs. But they did not know the desert, and they did not understand the people who called it home. The Queen did not flinch as the enemy drew nearer. She raised her hand, signaling for the warriors to halt. She turned to face Cole, her expression unwavering. "Stay with me," she said, her voice low but filled with conviction. "We fight for the land, for the future. We fight because it is our right." Cole nodded, his heart steadying. He was no longer just a cowboy. He was part of something bigger, something that had been passed down through generations. As the enemy drew closer, the Queen's voice rang out, her command clear and decisive. "Attack!" The warriors surged forward, a tidal wave of fury and determination. Cole followed, his instincts kicking in as the sound of hooves pounding the earth filled his ears. He felt the rush of battle, the noise, the chaos, the heat of the desert blending with the heat of the moment. The first clash was brutal. The sound of metal on metal rang out as swords met shields. Arrows flew through the air, and the warriors fought with a ferocity that left no room for mercy. Cole found himself facing one of the enemy riders, a tall man with a cruel smile on his face. His sword flashed in the sunlight, and Cole's heart raced as he raised his own blade, meeting the man's attack head-on. Their blades clashed, the force of the strike sending a shockwave through Cole's arm. The man was strong, but Cole was determined. With a swift motion, he disarmed the rider, sending his sword crashing to the ground. The enemy man staggered back, a look of disbelief on his face. But before he could react, Cole swung his sword in a wide arc, knocking the man to the ground. He stood over him for a moment, his breath heavy in his chest, before turning back to the battlefield. The fight raged on, and Cole could feel the energy of the warriors around him, each one fighting not just for survival, but for their future. As the sun climbed higher, the tide of the battle shifted. The queen fought alongside her people, her presence like a beacon of hope in the midst of the chaos. She moved with precision, every strike calculated, every movement a testament to the strength that had made her the leader she was. Cole felt a surge of pride as he fought beside her, his heart swelling with respect for the woman who had brought him into this world. The enemy, realizing they were losing, began to retreat. But the queen would not allow them to escape so easily. She raised her hand, signaling for the warriors to pursue. "We do not let them go," she said, her voice firm. "We end this fight now." The warriors surged forward once more, chasing down the remaining enemy riders and forcing them to surrender. By the time the dust settled, the desert was quiet again, save for the heavy breathing of the warriors and the distant howl of coyotes. The battle was over. They had won. Cole stood among the warriors, his body battered and bruised, but his spirit unbroken. He had fought for something greater than himself, and in doing so, he had found a new purpose. The queen rode up to him, her expression unreadable, but there was a glint in her eyes, a glint of pride. "You fought well, Cole Winters," she said. "You are one of us now." Cole stood among the victorious warriors, his body battered but his spirit high. The desert, which had once seemed so vast and unyielding, now felt like a place of belonging. He had fought beside the desert Apache queen and her people, and in doing so, had earned his place among them. As the last of the enemy riders were rounded up and taken captive, Cole took a deep breath, savoring the moment of victory. But there was no time for celebration. The queen, ever the leader, was already moving forward, her face serious, her eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for the next threat. She approached Cole, her expression unreadable. "You fought well today, Cole Winters," she said, her voice low but full of authority. "But this victory is just the beginning. There is more to come. The land is not yet safe." Cole nodded, his respect for her growing with every passing day. She had not only proven herself as a warrior, but as a leader, someone who could inspire and command. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "What comes next?" The queen's eyes softened for a moment, but the weight of her responsibility never wavered. "We move forward. We rebuild. The enemy will not stop, and neither will we. Our people need us. We will show them that we are stronger than they ever thought." As the warriors gathered around, preparing to return to the camp, Cole felt a surge of determination rise within him. He had been searching for purpose for so long, and now he had found it. He was no longer just a cowboy lost in the desert. He was part of something much bigger, something that had deep roots in the land and in the people who had lived there long before him. The queen's words echoed in his mind. "We rebuild." It was a call to action, a promise that no matter how hard the road ahead would be, they would face it together. As the sun began to set, casting its orange glow over the desert, the warriors mounted their horses and rode out. Cole rode at the queen's side, feeling the rhythm of the horses' hooves beneath him, the wind whipping through his hair. The land stretched out before them, endless and wild, but now it felt like a place where he could make a difference. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Cole knew he was ready. He had proven himself in battle, and now he would prove himself in the fight for the future of the Apache people. They rode for days, traveling through the harsh desert, crossing valleys and hills, moving with a sense of purpose and unity. Along the way, Cole learned more about the Apache way of life. He learned the traditions, the stories, and the deep connection to the land that bound them all together. The queen, though still the leader, shared moments of quiet reflection with him, speaking of her people's history and the challenges they had faced. "This land is our mother," she told him one evening, as they sat around a fire. "It gives us everything we need, but it also tests us. It has a way of shaping us, of teaching us what it means to survive." Cole listened intently, understanding now more than ever the strength of the people he had come to fight for. The land was not just a place. It was a living, breathing entity, one that required respect and understanding. As they neared their destination, a small village nestled in a valley, Cole could feel the weight of what was to come. The village was in need of protection, the people were vulnerable, and the enemy was still out there. But Cole was no longer just a man caught in the middle. He was a warrior, a protector of the land and its people. The queen turned to him as they approached the village, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "We protect them," she said simply. "We show them that the Apache will not be driven away. We will fight for our land, for our future." And with that, Cole knew that the battle was far from over. But he was ready. Together, they would face whatever came next. Cole rode alongside the queen as they neared the village, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The sound of hooves pounding against the earth was the only noise in the air, a constant rhythm that matched the beating of his heart. He could feel the tension growing, not just within himself, but in the air around them. The village ahead was small, but it was everything to the people who lived there. The queen had made it clear, this was a place worth fighting for. As they reached the outskirts of the village, Cole could see the fear in the eyes of the people. They were gathered in groups, watching from the distance, unsure of what was coming next. Some were preparing to flee, others to stand and fight. The queen slowed her horse, her eyes scanning the village. "We will not let fear control us," she said, her voice steady. "We fight, not just for ourselves, but for those who cannot fight for themselves." Her words struck Cole like a bolt of lightning. He had heard her speak of honor before, of the strength of her people, but this was something deeper. This was about protecting those who were vulnerable, those who depended on the strength of others to survive. The queen raised her hand, signaling for the warriors to dismount. "Prepare yourselves," she commanded. "The enemy is near." The warriors moved with precision, their movements fluid as they set up camp and prepared for the battle that was sure to come. Cole felt the adrenaline surge through him once again. This time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about standing with the queen and her people, fighting for something greater than any one individual. As night fell, the village grew quiet. The fires that had burned brightly throughout the day now flickered low, casting long shadows across the desert floor. Cole sat near the fire, his sword at his side, as the warriors gathered in a circle around the queen. Her face was illuminated by the firelight, and for the first time, Cole saw the toll that leadership had taken on her. There was a weariness in her eyes, a heaviness that no one else seemed to notice. "You have been preparing for this moment for your entire life," Cole said, his voice low but filled with respect. "But this is different." The queen met his gaze, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then she nodded, as if acknowledging something unspoken. "Yes," she replied quietly. "This is different. But it is also what we have been fighting for. This village, these people, they are our future." As the moon rose high in the sky, casting its silver light across the desert, the warriors stood ready. They were prepared for battle, their eyes focused, their hearts set on protecting what mattered most. Cole's hands were steady as he gripped his sword. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of something bigger, part of a family, part of a people who had fought for their survival for generations. The enemy arrived under the cover of darkness, their figures barely visible against the blackness of the desert. They came in waves, moving swiftly, their intentions clear. But the warriors of the desert Apache were ready. As the first wave of enemy riders surged into the village, the sound of battle erupted into the still night air. The clash of swords, the thundering of hooves, and the cries of warriors filled the space around them. Cole fought with everything he had, his training taking over as he moved fluidly through the chaos. The queen's presence was felt in every movement, every strike, as she fought alongside her people, her leadership unshaken. She was everywhere, a force of nature that inspired those around her to fight harder. Cole felt a deep sense of pride swell within him as he fought beside her, knowing that this battle was not just about survival. It was about honor, about protecting the future. Hours passed, and the battle raged on. The warriors fought with ferocity, their determination unwavering. The enemy, though strong in numbers, was no match for the Apache's skill, speed, and knowledge of the land. One by one, the enemy riders fell, their resistance weakening as the warriors pushed them back. Cole's movements became more fluid, more instinctual, as if the desert itself had taught him how to fight. And through it all, the Queen was at the center of it all, a beacon of strength and courage. As the last of the enemy riders fled into the desert, the village fell silent once more. The battle was over. The warriors stood victorious. Cole wiped the sweat from his brow, his body aching from the fight, but his spirit was strong. The Queen approached him, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place: pride, relief, perhaps even gratitude. "You fought well, Cole Winters," she said, her voice steady. "You are one of us now." Cole nodded, a sense of fulfillment filling him. He had fought for something worth fighting for. He had fought for the future of the Apache people. And as the Queen turned to lead her people back to the village, Cole knew that this was only the beginning of the journey ahead. Together, they would continue to fight for their land, their people, and their future. Cole stood on the edge of the village, the smell of smoke lingering in the air as the first light of dawn began to break over the desert. The battle was over, and the warriors of the Desert Apache had secured another victory, but there was no time to rest. The Queen, as always, was focused on the future. The enemy had been pushed back, but they were not defeated. Cole could see it in her eyes, the determination, the quiet strength that had always driven her. She had already moved forward, leading her people with a sense of purpose that Cole had come to respect more than anything else. "We must rebuild," the Queen said, her voice carrying the weight of her years of leadership. "But we must also prepare. The enemy will return. They always do." Her words were not a threat, but a statement of fact. Cole nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. This land, this desert, had always been a place of conflict. But it was also a place of resilience, of survival. And the Apache people, led by the Queen, were its fiercest defenders. As the village slowly came to life, Cole joined the warriors in their morning rituals. They moved with precision, preparing for whatever came next. But Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something was different this time. The battle had been hard, but it had been won. The enemy had underestimated the strength of the Apache people, and now they would feel the consequences. Yet, Cole knew there was more to the Queen's plan than just defeating an enemy. This fight was about something much larger. As he worked alongside the warriors, helping to mend what had been broken during the battle, Cole reflected on how far he had come. He had arrived in the desert a stranger, unsure of his place in the world. But now, with each passing day, he felt more at home. The Queen had taken him in, shown him the ways of her people, and taught him what it meant to fight for something greater than himself. As the day wore on, the warriors gathered for a council. The Queen addressed them, her voice calm but firm. "We have fought many battles," she said, "but the true test is still ahead. We will not let our land fall into the hands of those who do not understand it." Her words were met with nods of agreement from the warriors. They knew the stakes. This was not just about defending their land, it was about defending their way of life. Cole stood at the back of the group, listening intently. He had fought in many battles before, but none like this. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for honor, for tradition, for the future. As the council came to an end, the Queen turned to him. "You have proven yourself, Cole Winters," she said. "But the real test is still to come. You will lead a scouting party to find out where the enemy is gathering. We need to know their numbers, their strength, their plans." Cole nodded, a sense of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This was a different kind of fight, a fight for information, for strategy. He had learned to fight with strength, but now he would have to fight with his mind. That night, Cole gathered his party, 5 of the fiercest warriors the Queen had to offer. They set out under the cover of darkness, moving quickly and quietly through the desert. The air was cool, the stars bright above them. Cole led the way, his eyes scanning the terrain, his senses heightened. They had learned long ago that the desert was both their ally and their enemy. The enemy could be anywhere, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. As they traveled deeper into enemy territory, Cole felt a sense of anticipation growing within him. This was his chance to prove himself, to show the queen and her people that he was more than just a warrior. He was a leader. They moved for miles, staying off the main paths and using the natural cover of the desert to remain unseen. By the time the sun began to rise, they had reached a ridge overlooking a large encampment. Cole and his warriors took cover behind the rocks, watching in silence as the enemy gathered below. There were hundreds of them, armed and prepared, their intentions clear. The enemy was organizing for another attack. Cole's heart pounded in his chest as he took in the scene. He could see the strength of the enemy, but he also saw their weaknesses, their disorganization, their reliance on numbers over strategy. He turned to his warriors, his mind already working on a plan. "We need to report back to the queen," he said, his voice low but determined. "We will not engage yet. We'll wait for the right moment." The warriors nodded, understanding the importance of what Cole had just said. They had learned that patience in the desert was just as important as strength in battle. As they made their way back to the village, Cole's mind raced. He had learned so much from the queen and her warriors, but now he had to prove that he could use that knowledge to outsmart the enemy. The battle ahead would not be won by strength alone. It would be won by strategy, by understanding the land, and by knowing when to strike. When they returned to the village, Cole found the queen waiting for him, her expression unreadable. "You have the information?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with expectation. Cole nodded. "Yes, my queen," he said. "They are gathering, and they are ready. But they are not as prepared as they think. We can defeat them, but we must be patient. We must wait for the right moment to strike." The queen studied him for a moment before nodding. "You have learned well, Cole Winters," she said. "Now we wait. The battle will come on our terms." Cole stood at the edge of the village, the sun dipping low behind the jagged desert peaks, casting a golden light across the land. The battle had been fought, and the victory was theirs. The enemy, who had once seemed so overwhelming, had been defeated. But Cole knew that the queen was right. Their fight was far from over. The land they fought for was still at risk, and the people still had much to rebuild. As the warriors gathered around, their faces grim but proud, the queen approached Cole. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that spoke of gratitude, of a bond that had been forged in the heat of battle. "You've done well, Cole Winters," she said, her voice steady, filled with respect. "Your strength, your courage, it's what we needed. But this victory, this battle, it's only one part of the war." Cole nodded, his mind still racing with the events of the past few days. The fight had been hard, but it had been more than just a physical battle. It had been about proving their strength, their resolve, and their will to protect what was theirs. And now, they would take the lessons learned from this battle and use them to prepare for whatever came next. "What comes next?" Cole asked, his voice calm but filled with anticipation. The queen looked out over the desert, her gaze steady, as if seeing beyond the horizon. "We rebuild," she said. "We restore what we've lost, and we prepare for the future. The enemy will not stop coming. They will always find a way to threaten us, to take what we have. But we will stand strong. We will fight for this land, for our people, for our future." Cole could feel the weight of her words settling in his chest. He had come to the desert looking for something deeper than just survival or victory. He had found it in the queen and in the Apache people. He had found a purpose. He had found a home. "I'm ready," he said, his voice unwavering. The queen turned to him, a small but meaningful smile playing on her lips. "I know you are. That's why you're here. We fight for each other. We fight for the land. And we fight because it's what's right." As the days passed, Cole threw himself into the work of rebuilding. The village, though scarred from the battle, began to show signs of life again. The people worked together, their spirits lifted by the promise of a brighter future. Cole found himself becoming more than just a warrior. He became a leader, guiding the people with the same strength and determination that the queen had shown him. He learned the ways of the Apache people, not just in battle, but in their everyday lives. He learned to respect the land, to honor the traditions, and to understand the deep connection they had to everything around them. The queen, too, was hard at work, overseeing the restoration of the village and ensuring that her people were well prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. She was tireless in her efforts, never slowing down, always thinking ahead. But despite the long hours and the constant work, Cole could see the toll it took on her. She was strong, But she was human, and even the strongest warriors needed rest. One evening, as the campfire crackled and the stars shone brightly overhead, the queen approached Cole. She sat beside him, her eyes reflecting the light of the fire. "You've done well, Cole," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You've become one of us." Cole turned to her, his heart swelling with pride. "I only did what was needed," he said. "I'm not sure I could have done it without you." The queen smiled, a rare, genuine smile that made Cole realize just how far they had come. "You've learned," she said, "and that's what matters. You've proven yourself. You've earned your place here." The night grew quiet as the two sat in companionable silence, the weight of their journey settling around them. They had fought together, bled together, and survived together. They were more than just warriors, they were a family. And in that moment, Cole knew that no matter what the future held, he was ready. He was ready to face whatever challenges came his way, alongside the queen and the Apache people. Together, they would fight for the land, for their future, and for each other. The queen stood, her silhouette outlined against the night sky. "Tomorrow," she said, "we ride again. The fight is never over. But we are stronger now, and we will continue to stand strong, no matter what." Cole stood beside her, his heart filled with determination. "We ride together," he said, his voice firm with resolve. And so, under the stars, they prepared for the battles yet to come. But Cole no longer feared what lay ahead. He had found his place, and he would stand with the queen and her people, fighting for a future that was worth protecting.